Welcome back, true believers and all you merry Marvelites, to another very exciting episode of Avengers Project 101. Now, this is going to be a very exciting episode because not only have we finally gotten to the end of the overall news that was revealed for the game during the Gamescom convention, but this directly relates to one of the most important aspects of the game, with that of the combat system. And once again, all this information does come from a very informative GameSpot article which did break down the entirety of the Avengers Project presentation, which was shown off during Gamescom 2019. And not only does this provide a lot more depth to how the combat is actually going to operate within this game, but we do get some small teases and hints as to what the progression system is going to entail relating to all the characters. Now, before we continue on any further, I do have to thoroughly stress as to one of the reasons why this game's combat may look a bit familiar to some of you is because the game's main combat designer of Vince Napoli, who actually led God of War's combat, is in fact working on Marvel's Avengers. And just knowing how immensely layered and incredibly powerful the God of War combat was, I do think it's safe to assume that we are in for a real treat linked to all the heroes' combat within the Avengers. But mainly in the case of God of War, I definitely think that Thor is a character to look out for when fully upgrading him throughout the game. But as we move on with the GameSpot article itself, I will also be breaking it apart relating to some other information that we did receive from the main developers, who did add on a little bit more information relating to the overall combat for each specific hero. But to take a quote from GameSpot directly, which once again goes back to the prologue of the Avengers Project, is that the A-Day level takes you through a cinematic battle on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, which is a fairly on-rails experience. As minions of Taskmaster attack the bridge, you take on the role of each of the Avengers in turn and get a sense for how they handle. The combat is mostly of the melee variety, and each Avenger has a light attack and a heavy attack, as well as a quick dodge move that lets them get out of trouble. Incoming enemy attacks are marked with indicators on the screen to tell you when to move, and holding down the attack buttons triggers different versions of the attacks. In the case of Thor, your first character, holding down the light attack lets you spin his hammer around to pummel enemies with rapid hits, while holding down the heavy attack triggered a blast of lightning along the ground that could zap multiple enemies in front of him. If your character has a ranged ability, you can aim it by holding down the right trigger and fire it by hitting your attack button. Thor throws his hammer, Iron Man fires repulsor blast, Cap hucks his shield, and so on. So if you're someone like me who has actually played God of War, this combat system is definitely going to feel familiar to you. All of the main staples that God of War had do seem to be reappearing within the Avengers Project, with that of light and heavy attacks, as well as being able to charge said attacks to deal more damage. Not only that, but if you happen to be surrounded by a bunch of bad guys that you can't really escape from, there is in fact a dodge button to get you out of trouble. So hopefully all of the combos that we did see during the A-Day gameplay is only what the characters can play like during the very beginning of the game, and will only get stronger as you keep progressing through the main story. Because I know for a fact that Kratos was an absolute beast by the end of God of War, with a completely upgraded Leviathan axe and Blades of Chaos to deal extreme amounts of damage to everyone in sight. And knowing that they're seemingly doing the exact same thing with all the Avengers makes me even more interested to see what their final upgrades are going to be like. But to continue with the article itself, it does dive into the specific playstyle that each Avenger really focuses on, mainly relating to how you can try and differentiate them between each specific hero. And to put it in the words of the article, it does state you try out each of the characters on A-Day and get a sense of their strengths and weaknesses. Thor is great for crowd control and dealing with groups of melee fighters, while Iron Man can hover over the battlefield and snipe away at more irritating enemies. Hulk is more or less a runaway train, picking up enemies and smashing them into each other to dispatch them quickly, or leaping into the air for devastating impact attacks upon landing. Black Widow can whip a grapple at enemies to fling herself at them for melee combos, or fire away with a pair of handguns. And Cap's shield means he can close distances on dangerous enemies and avoid their attacks. So as we were all expecting, each specific Avenger within the game is going to have a very different and unique playstyle compared to the other heroes that you can unlock down the line. So for example, if you're someone who just wants to demolish every single enemy in sight, I definitely think Hulk is your best pick for the main hero that you probably want to play as during co-op missions. But on the other hand, if you're someone who wants a wide variety of gameplay ranging from both up close quarters combat as well as ranged attacks, I definitely think someone like Thor is going to be a better suited option. But just knowing that there's going to be a plethora of characters to choose from to fully fit your own unique playstyle is definitely going to be a treat to see be played out. Now, as we move further with the article, we do get some very important details relating to both the developers and this article itself, ranging from the heroic abilities that you can use as each specific Avenger. But as GameSpot describes, the core combat of Avengers has the feel of something like Spider-Man or God of War. You have a handful of close combat abilities, some ranged attacks, and some powerful heroic moves that charge up and let you unleash things like Hulk's Sonic Clap or Iron Man's Unibeam, rocking multiple enemies and dealing high damage. Everyone plays similarly enough that you can pick up any hero and go to work, with key differences based on their abilities and powers that make them all feel distinct. And to call back during the time when I was lucky enough to interview one of the creative directors of this game with that of Noah Hughes, he did basically describe that each specific character will feel like that it is fitting for their own unique game. So in summary, the final product of the game is going to feel like that Captain America's moveset could fit in a fully AAA standalone Captain America game, as well as a AAA Thor game, Iron Man game, and so on. And just knowing that they're trying to have each specific hero be fleshed out in their own unique way just shows how passionate they are to try and deliver the best Avengers experience that we could possibly receive. But at the same time, just like the article described, the combat is going to basically feel like a blueprint for each new hero that you end up playing as. Like we already discussed previously, every single hero that you play as is going to come fully equipped with some heavy and light attacks that you can fully charge to deal more damage, as well as some dodge mechanics to get out of the way for enemy attacks. And to add on to the list, we also have the very interesting heroic abilities, which were described a bit more in depth during the Gamescom presentation. And if you've managed to catch a glimpse on the lower right hand corner of the screen, you will notice 3 separate icons with that of L1, R1, as well as L1 and R1 together. Not only can these heroic abilities be upgraded down the line, but we also have a name for them relating to each specific one. So for starters, the L1 super move is actually referred to as a support ability, while the R1 super move is actually referred to as an assault ability. And as we've all accurately guessed already, the L1 and R1 move is none other than that of the ultimate ability, which is basically a huge area of effect attack for each specific Avenger. So as an example, we did see the supportive ability for Thor during the beginning of the A-Day gameplay, where he actually summoned a bunch of lightning to take out a lot of the Taskmaster goons on the Golden Gate Bridge. The reason why this classifies as a supportive ability is because you're actually still controlling Thor while this super move is helping you take out other bad guys in your vicinity. Whereas for the case of Captain America, we did actually see his R1 assault ability in action during the very beginning of his gameplay sequence, where he throws his shield and it ricochets off a bunch of enemies. But obviously the best one of these heroic abilities, in my personal opinion, that we did see during the A-Day gameplay is in fact Hulk's ultimate ability during the end of his gameplay sequence, where he does the ultimate thunderclap to take out every single enemy in his way. And knowing that's just the beginning of what else is in store relating to the multiple upgrades that we can unlock for each specific Avenger, I'm really excited to see the depth of this upgrade system in action. And just knowing that this is only a glimpse as to the wider roster of characters that we can access down the line, I'm very intrigued to see what their heroic abilities are going to be once we do unlock them. But as we proceed with this GameSpot article, it does go into what the main aspects of the combat fully entail. And as it directly states, combat is satisfying thanks to the breadth of moves you have at your disposal. Avengers Core Combat encourages you to chain together moves to keep opponents off balance. Walloping one guy with Thor's hammer to send him flying before you throw Mjolnir at another and pin him to a truck has the same kind of type fluidity as other big third-person action games. Each of the heroes has their own capabilities and requires a different style, adding variety to the fights. At least in the brief portion we played, Avengers did a pretty good job of making you feel you're inhabiting one of Earth's mightiest heroes, complete with their unique set of powers. And to expand upon that paragraph a little bit further, I do want to describe some notes that the developers did actually provide during the Gamescom presentation. Based on what we know so far, Avengers is shaping up to be a fully AAA third-person action-adventure RPG. And oddly enough, it definitely seems like they're focusing a lot on the RPG element that this game is going to have. Besides everything having to do with the customization, this also relates to how you can actually upgrade each specific Avenger. Based on what the developers have said during Gamescom, each specific hero is going to have their own unique skill tree, meaning that the upgrades that we are going to see for a character like Thor is going to be vastly different for a character like that of Black Widow. Not only that, but you're also going to have to level up each different Avenger when you do play as them throughout the game. And as another example, say that you manage to defeat a bunch of AIM soldiers during that Captain America sequence that he ends up becoming level 5. Well, as it turns out, leveling up is not going to carry over for every single Avenger within the game, meaning that you're gonna have to try and play as each different hero to have them level up in their own unique progression system. This heavily relates to the massive looter shooter grinding element that we have seen in other games like that of Destiny and Anthem, so I do think it's going to be the same type of aspect relating to Marvel's Avengers. So basically, you could be spending a lot of time leveling up a character like the Hulk to make him even stronger, but at the same time, that means that your Iron Man is going to be staying at the same level if you don't actually play as him and have him gain some experience. And alongside this in-depth progression system, this also directly relates to the skill tree, which the developers have confirmed in the past is going to be vastly different depending on which upgrades you actually purchase. On the one hand, you could actually try and upgrade Tony to have him focus more on his ranged attacks, or if you want to, you could actually try and increase his close quarters combat abilities. So knowing that your own personal character could be completely different from someone else's is going to give a lot lot of variety relating to the game's upgrade system and co-op abilities. Especially if these systems are as deep as the developers are making them out to be, I can definitely see a lot of variety being implemented within this one asset alone. But to wrap up the last of the combat details that we do know from the developers themselves is actually something very interesting relating to the enemies that we will fight with in the game. Even though I'm not entirely sure how I feel about these details, the developers did confirm that each individual enemy will in fact have a health bar along with damage numbers every time you land an attack. Once again, this directly relates to the massive RPG elements that this game will feature, but hopefully there is an option to turn these off if you don't want to see that appear during your gameplay. And mainly regarding all those cool combat finishers that we do see the Avengers pull off during the A-Day gameplay, the developers did confirm that you can actually execute them if the enemy is low on health. And just like Spider-Man PS4 and the Batman Arkham games, the only way that you can perform them is by pressing triangle and circle at the same exact time. So instead of building up your focus meter like what we saw in Spider-Man PS4 or reaching a specific combo count like what we saw in Batman Arkham, the only way that you can pull off these finishers is having the enemy reach a low health count. Now, while this may seem like a massive amount of information for the Avengers Project's combat system, I really do hope that they actually confirm or add one aspect that definitely should be in a AAA Avengers game. And considering that co-op is going to be one of the main features of this game, I think it would be an absolute travesty if they didn't add this somewhere down the line. And of course, I'm mainly referring to team-up attacks that you can do between each specific Avenger. Now, even though we have seen these be featured incredibly well within the Ultimate Alliance games, I really do hope that they can do it here within a fully AAA setting. It's really nice to know that every single hero will have special abilities to use on every single enemy, but I really do hope that they also add team-up moves as an upgrade down the line. And for me personally, just imagining Thor hitting Captain America's shield with Mjolnir to create a massive area of effect attack would just be flat out incredible to see be played out. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see as to how it's all finished by the time the game releases on May 15th, 2020. And until that time comes, everyone, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What do you think about all these details relating to Marvel's Avengers combat system, and who are you excited to play as the most? For me personally, even though I am still hoping for Spider-Man to be a playable character within this game down the line, the main character I'm actually going to be playing as the majority of the time is none other than the God of Thunder himself, of Thor. I definitely see Thor as an all-around character relating to ranged attacks, being able to fly, as well as super strength to deal massive amounts of damage. Plus, I definitely think it's going to feel pretty familiar to me, considering how the God of War combat could definitely be that of a replica for what Thor is going to be within this game. But until the Avengers Project actually launches, we can't know for sure how the combat is going to work out. But until that time comes, everyone, thank you all so much for watching, stay merry Marvelites, and peace out.